So we're starting off a brand new week. We're a little short for grocery money this week, so my recipes are going to be a lot of using kind of some leftovers from the night before to make a new dinner the night after. So tonight I'm actually starting with a baked meatball Parmigiana. I've been seeing it as Parmigiano. Italians out there, correct me which one it should be, or does it matter? I don't really know. So basically this is baked meatballs with cheese and sauce. So tomorrow I'm going to be using any leftover meatballs and sauce to actually make a spaghetti and meatballs, so it becomes kind of an elevated version. So this recipe specifically calls for about 1.5 pounds of a mixed meat variety. I'm not quite that adventurous, so I've got just over 2 pounds of ground sirloin because that is my choice of ground meat. You can use pork, you can use veal, you can use ground just regular chuck. I don't really care. I personally just like ground sirloin. I think it tastes better. I think it's smoother. I don't like biting into little fatty pieces of fat. Yes, I said that. Fatty pieces of fat. So I've got my oven already preheated to 400s because first we're going to put our meatballs in a pan, let them cook for a little while, and then we're going to lower our temperature a little bit later. So for now, we're going to at least get everything kind of mixed up, get everything ready to go, then we'll make our balls, throw them in the oven, and then we'll put everything together. So the first step, you're going to see I'm taking off my jewelry because I know I'm going to get messy. First thing I want to do is I actually want to cut up all of my garlic. This says to have 4 cloves roughly chopped. Because I'm also using a little bit more sirloin, and because I'm kind of a garlic freak, I'm using basically the leftovers of what was left on my current big old thing of garlic. So I'm just going to take all of these, and I'm going to give them all a nice rough chop, and I'll kind of show you what that means on this first one. I hate peeling garlic. I know I could probably just like smash it and that little trick, right? In case you didn't know that one. A lot of times I don't like doing it that way because I feel like it just kind of ruins my garlic, but you can do whatever you want. So my rough chop is I'm literally just going to be taking some chunks, and then I'm going to just cut them all maybe like in another half. So we've got nice little chunky pieces of garlic. Chunky pieces. So I'm going to do that for all of my garlic pieces, and then I'm going to throw them here in the bowl, and then when we come back we'll actually mix up everything else into that mixture as well. Okay, so I've got my garlic all chopped up. I've got about 10 to 12 cloves in here. I give that range because I had little small ones and I had really big pieces, so use your judgment on how garlicky you like something. This calls for 4 cloves. I used probably double to triple that. So again, you can edit all this depending on what you like and what you don't like. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my ground sirloin in here. And as I'm putting it in here, I'm just going to start breaking it up. Just make it a little bit easier once I start going in here to really mix things around. Like I said, I've got a little more meat than what this one calls for, so that's also another reason I'm kind of upping some of my seasonings. I don't have too much more. I've got just over 2 pounds, and this recipe calls for about 1.5 pounds. So not too much more, but I also know that I want to make sure I have enough for leftovers tomorrow. So we're going to add this in here, and this recipe also calls just for parsley. In case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm not a huge fan of parsley. I'll use it if I have it, and if it's a new recipe that I'm just curious what they think it actually adds. Meatballs, I'm not a fan. I've got an Italian seasoning that I'm actually going to throw in here rather than just a plain parsley. So I'm going to wash my hands, and then we'll come right back and I'll start throwing seasonings in. Okay, so this calls for a handful of chopped parsley. So I'm basically just going to open up my Italian seasoning, and I'm just going to put a nice little layer there on top. And then we also have a cup of breadcrumbs. I'm actually going to use up the rest of my panko, and then I'm going to top off that cup with the rest of the breadcrumbs. regular Italian style ones. You don't have to do this. I just like to use up stuff that I have, and since I know I don't have too much left of this panko, might as well use it, right? So I've got my 1 cup here. I'm going to pour my panko. Yeah, I've maybe got a 1/3 cup left of that, so to not have my eggs fall on the ground, that would not be fun. Might for you guys, but it would not be fun for me. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just top off my cup. And I'm going to put just a little bit extra, again, just because I've got a little bit more meat than what they originally called for. So we also need a cup of Parmesan cheese. I also love cheese. So while I'll do the cup, I'll probably add in more. Yeah, we'll just finish that off. That's how we're going to do that. Okay, and then we've got the 2 eggs and salt and pepper. So again, with the salt and pepper, salt is something that's very finicky. You kind of just have to start working with it and figuring out where your level of salt is. I'm still perfecting that. My pepper, I'm usually pretty good about it because I can taste stuff along the way. It's really hard, obviously, to taste test when you're working with raw meat. But you learn as you start going. So a lot of times when people first start cooking, they literally will follow like measurements to a T. The problem is a lot of recipes just say salt and pepper to taste. Okay, but you know, you can't taste raw meats. So, you know, unless you're doing something that is just raw meat, but this is not. So you kind of just have to guess. You'll figure it out. I do every time. Like I said, I usually will go as much salt as I think needs to be there for that much meat, and then I go just over that like threshold of meat going, oh god, that might be too much. Usually it winds up being pretty good. So I'm going to throw our 2 eggs in here. The eggs act as a binding agent, so they help to actually bring everything together. Alright, and then we're going to get in here dirty. I'm going to mix all this up together, and then when we come back, I'll start forming our balls. We'll stick them in the oven, and we'll go from there. Hi there. Okay, so one, I realized I didn't have any lights on in here, so apologies if the beginning of this video is super dark. But we've got my meat all mixed up here, so you can actually see the cheese and some of my seasonings in here and the breadcrumbs. I actually wound up adding an extra egg in here, so I have 3 total eggs. And I did that just because it seemed super dry, especially since I added a little bit of extra breadcrumbs to it. So I went ahead and I just threw another egg in there. So if you ever have something like that it gets really too dry, add some kind of little liquid, or if you're working with eggs, you can add another egg. You just play with it until it gets to that texture where you think that it's right. So this doesn't specify how big to make our meatballs. It just says to basically start taking them and make yourself some probably regular sized meatballs. So what, 1.5 inches? And I'm going to just put these all on a regular cooking sheet. And when I do this, I'm going to put them in the oven at 400. And we're going to let them sit in the oven for, I believe, 20 minutes. Yep. So we're going to let these bake for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to pull them out, and then we're going to actually form our little Parmigiana dish. Don't worry if some of your meatballs are bigger than others, just try to make sure that they're not crazy. Hi everyone! Alright, so our meatballs have been in the oven for about 20 minutes. So I've just taken them out. Everything's still super hot, so you can see I've got my cookie sheet sitting on a towel on my counter just to keep my counter from getting too hot. So now we're actually going to start putting this all together in our 9x13. I'm not greasing this. You can, but I'm not going to because we're actually going to layer just a small layer of sauce. So I've got 2 here from Bertolli. I've got a tomato and basil, and then I've also got a vodka sauce. So I like the vodka sauce because I feel like it lightens up the tomatoiness, and I'm not a humongous like normal spaghetti fan or regular sauce fan. I like things to be creamier. But on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and just layer this tomato and basil. So the recipe calls for 2 jars. But you can use basically as much or as little as you want. Like I said, I'm going to pour this whole jar in the bottom. And we'll put that in recycling. We're just going to spread that out. Just nice and evenly along the bottom of my pan. Balance. Okay, and now we're going to take our meatballs and I'm going to just lay them on my 9x13. So it looks like I actually made pretty much the perfect amount of meatballs, so I'm kind of impressed with myself right now, if I must say so. Okay, so now I'm going to pour my vodka sauce over top. Muscles. And actually, I think I'm going to do a small layer of just the remaining mozzarella cheese I have in here first. I'm just going to very lightly spread this over before I put the sauce on. I think I'd like to have some of that cheese melting over my meat directly. Like I said, I'm just going to take everything from this one little bag. So I forgot I had a whole another big bag, which makes a cheese fan like me super happy. All that cheese out of there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pour my vodka sauce. I'm going to go row by row here just to make sure that every meatball gets some of the sauce. And yes, I am going to use all of it. 1, because I want everything to have sauce on it. And 2, since I know I'm going to be using any leftovers for spaghetti tomorrow, there's no sense in me holding on to any sauce, because then this makes my life so much easier tomorrow, where I can just throw some noodles in a pot and then throw these on top and I'm done. Okay, so we're going to do more cheese. Ooh, okay. Apparently that chunk decided to just fall all in one place. And this is another, again, if you don't like cheese that much, you can substitute something else in here. I don't really know what people substitute for cheese because I live for cheese. So I almost never substitute anything, or I'll always at least double, triple the amount of cheese that a recipe may call for. But I also want to save some of this cheese for either later, if I think that there's a piece that needs a little extra, or for tomorrow for my spaghetti. Alright, so we are going to cover this in foil. My oven has been turned down to 375, so I'm going to cover this, and then we're going to throw it in the oven for 20 minutes. And then at that point I'll take it out. I'm going to check everything, make sure everything's looking good, make sure my sauce looks like it's boiling, my cheese is melting down, and then I'm going to put it back in the oven without the foil for one more set of 20 minutes. I'll probably honestly be checking on this every 5-ish minutes after that 10-minute mark, just because I want to make sure that this doesn't get burned or that it doesn't look like it's going a little crazy. Totally up to you. Again, at the end of this video, I'll let you know for sure what my total amount of time was and everything. But for your purposes, for now, it's covered in foil, 20 minutes at 375 now. We'll take it out, remove our foil, put it back in the oven at 375 for at least another 20 minutes. And I know that the person who originally created this recipe said for the last few minutes she actually upped her degrees to 400. You can totally do that. It will help with the browning on top. Or if you want, you can take it out about 5 minutes early, turn on your broiler, and then just stick this without foil under your broiler and just watch it every like 20-30 seconds, because that broiler gets hot. It's 500 plus degrees. But I like putting it things like this under the broiler for those last few minutes, because then it gets like that nice crispy topping. So when you bite into something that's cheesy, you've got that little crunch that you go through first, and then you get into the gooey cheese, and that's the best. So we're going to do that, and then we'll be enjoying our meatball Parmigiana tonight. And then, like I said, tomorrow we'll use any leftovers, because obviously this is way more food than what my husband and I will eat. So have a great night. Thank you again for subscribing. Please share. Please shoot out any suggestions for recipes you'd like to see. I'm definitely more than happy to pretty much try anything. So with that, have a happy Monday, and we'll see you next time.